Welcome to the 2023-2024 NBA Deep Dive series, where we're going through every single team from worst to first, from lowest rated to highest rated. And today we have the Utah Jazz, and they're coming in a little bit higher than I think most people are predicting. I looked at some of the Vegas odds and the preseason rankings, and yet again, this team is kind of being slept on, kind of being doubted on. And I am super high on this team, especially given the year they had last year. They should only continue to get better, but they are coming in at 19th, even though they did have a 37-45 record last season. But a lot of that was from their hot start. They started 10-3, finished 31-31 at one point in the season, and then just kind of shamelessly tanked the final month of the year, kind of like a lot of teams did, like the Blazers, like the Mavericks. And that's okay because they wanted to improve their draft positioning, got into the top 10 in the lottery, but they finished 12th in the Western Conference, just missed out on the play-in tournament, which is impressive for a team that is trying to rebuild. They went, okay, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Bojan Bogdanovic, Joe Ingles. Who else did they have on the team? Royce O'Neal. This team isn't working. Let's blow the team up. Let's have Trader Danny do what he does best and get 1 million draft picks for these guys. Let's get rid of Quinn Snyder and move in a younger direction. And it's working. And this rebuild is starting to be one of the quickest rebuilds we've ever seen. They're literally their superstar away from being a championship team. But of course, that's always the hardest piece to find. Is a Nikola Jokic? Is a LeBron James? Is a Giannis Antetokounmpo? But that is the player that they are missing to go to the next level, to be a dynasty, because this team has a lot of good players on it, which is why they're coming in with that 79.42 ranking. But let's go ahead and talk about their offseason. Now, they are losing a few pieces, but I would say these are pretty minor losses. Udoka Azubuike, gone. Struggle with injuries, struggle with defense, struggle with athleticism. Jazz fans were constantly rooting for him to get on the court and kind of show what he's worth, but at the end of the day, he wasn't able to offer you backup center minutes to this team in his many years on the Utah Jazz, developing and just not earning minutes. Rudy Gay is gone, and I can tell you every single Jazz fan is cheering. Now, we love Rudy Gay. When he came into the league for the Grizzlies, for the Kings, even for the Spurs, he was a reliable wing player, learned how to shoot the three, didn't just rely on his athleticism. But at the end of the day, for this Utah Jazz team, he was taking away touches and minutes from the younger guys who could have used it. In countless games, Rudy Gay was in for more than he should have been. He played more minutes than he should have, didn't play as good defense because he's like 90 years old, and took away shots from the younger guys. And it's good to see him on a different team, earning his $6 million, and then probably going to retire, because that's really where he belongs. He's a great locker room guy, great veteran, but not somebody you want on the court day in and day out. Juan Toscano Anderson, I'm kind of disappointed at the regression that occurred to him, because when he was on the Warriors, he was hustling, he was all out, one of these undrafted kids that earned a guaranteed contract out of Mexico, a great story to him, etc. And then he got traded, and his three-pointer fell off. I think he shot something like 17%, was afraid to shoot. And if you're in today's NBA and you can't shoot the ball, you're not long for this league. And even though Juan Toscano Anderson always gave you great defense and energy, he just wasn't good enough. And lastly, they got rid of Damian Jones, who showed a few flashes of maybe he could be a backup or a third-string center. But at the end of the day, they brought in Omer Yurtseven, who's going to be a little bit better. But looking at the additions, they picked up John Collins for nothing. And we'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to John Collins. But oh my God, the Hawks, I'm not going to say they got fleeced because they got out from under his contract. He's locked in for another, 2-3 years at $25 million a year. That's a lot of money for a guy who's a negative player. But man, he just got traded away for a second-round pick and Rudy Gay. That's it? I mean, Jakob Poeltl gets you like a first-round pick in 2 seconds, right? How does John Collins only get you a second-round pick that's protected? So theoretically, he just got traded away for Rudy Gay if the picks end up where they may. And that's bizarre to me. That is absurd to me. And I know John Collins has struggled, and I know he's been on the trade market for every single season. He's in every single rumor for the Hawks. But the fact that the Jazz picked up a potential all-star talent for basically nothing from a struggling, floundering team is part of why they call him Trader Danny, why Danny Ainge is one of the best leaders of an organization, and why this Utah Jazz team has a bright future, because when he's at the controls, there's nothing but stars in the future. Taylor Hendricks, the number 9 overall pick, Keontae George, the number 16 overall pick, and then Bryce Sensabaugh, I believe the number 28 overall pick. But let's go ahead and dive into this roster finally, where we start with the man, the myth, the legend, Collin Sexton. And he was okay last year. He kind of struggled with his injury. He missed about half the season. Well, let's see. He missed about a quarter of the season recovering from the ACL, then came in and then got hurt again and missed the last half of the season. And then they were taking it anyway, so it's like, why bother putting him back in? But I saw Twitter saying Collin Sexton is a bust. And I have to give a hard disagree here. It's not that he's a bust. he just didn't develop into a superstar, and we have to be careful judging these young players. His playmaking never has grown to be a point guard. 2.9 assists per game, not great. 1.8 turnovers, even worse. You stretch that out to per 100 possessions. That means he's giving you 5.8 assists, which was a career high for him, but then 3.5 turnovers. So his playmaking got a little bit better last season because everybody plays better under Will Hardy. We'll talk about that when we get to the coaching culture ranking. But at the end of the day, he's just not a facilitator. His limited height at 6'1"-ish gives you limited rotations that he can play on because he's not going to be a guy who's going to give you good defense. Look no further than a guy like Kyrie Irving, who even though he's going to try on the defensive end, he's undersized. He doesn't have the Talen Horton-Tucker's 7-foot wingspan. He doesn't have a thick build. He's going to be a mismatch on the defensive end. And so when he was playing alongside a 6'1" Darius Garland, that's a problem. When he's playing along a negative defender Jordan Clarkson, it's a problem. And he needs a good team behind him to compensate, or he needs to come off the bench and be a 6-man scorer. The problem with the Jazz is that they already have Jordan Clarkson here. So there are some rumors about how this guard rotation is going to look. They might have Talen Horton-Tucker playing the point guard position. They might have Chris Dunn playing the point guard position. There's a lot of potential rotations that are going to go on with this Utah Jazz team, and I think it's going to change from game to game. So I'm just having Colin Sexton here for now, but there is a really interesting thing going on here in Utah. As for Colin Sexton, he still is a shot maker. He's a spark plug. Shot 39% from 3 last year, which was great. And honestly, after his short stint of 11 games last year before he tore his ACL, shooting 24% and 37% the year before, it looks like he's starting to return to form. And when these guys get these ACL injuries, it's not 1 year they get hurt, they come back, and then they're back to themselves. They take about 2 years to fully return to 100% form. Look at a guy like Jamal Murray. He comes back, he's pretty good, gets a full offseason working out, comes back the next year, and this is when they win the championship. These guys take time to heal, especially in the grind of the NBA season, 82 games. So expect a slightly even better Colin Sexton than he was last year. Now, injuries are going to be a concern with him because he's missed a lot of games at this point. Played 82 games in his rookie year, then 65, then 60, then 11 on the ACL year, 48 last year. Probably going to miss maybe 20 to 30 games this year, so something to look out for. Gonna have to load manage him, but at the very least, he's going to be a spark plug and a shot maker for your offense, and he's certainly able to create for his own, and he's improving on the creating for others because the 2.9 assists doesn't look impressive on its own, but like I said, you stretch that out to per 100. He had 5.8 assists, only rivaled by his 6.1 in the 2020 season, and then his turnovers were at a career low, 3.5, matching his rookie year low. So the facilitation is getting a little better. He's going to have another year under Coach Hardy's system, and he's going to have another year playing alongside Jordan Clarkson and Lauri Markkanen and Ochai Agbaji, and kind of gets another tendency. So I'm saying possible breakout year for Colin Sexton. Moving on to Jordan Clarkson, and it's good to see him back on the team. I know there was a little bit of a, ooh, is he going to come back? Does he not want to play here? Why did he decline the contract extension? And I'm glad he's back because the contract extension actually works for both of them. He's going to get $23 million a year this year, which is a lot. I understand that, but then he's down to 14 and 14.2 the next 2 years, which is more of a team-friendly deal. So he's going to get his money while this team isn't splashing in free agency because it's Utah, and then he's going to be on a team-friendly deal for the next 2 seasons, locked up, bona fide scorer, 6th man of the year, closer, maybe their second best offensive player outside of Lauri Markkanen. He might be their best shot creator, but Jordan Clarkson is who Jordan Clarkson is, and he's just a fiery shot maker. He has no bad shots and no conscience whatsoever. He's going to take and miss a lot of shots. His efficiency has never been great, but last year he actually had a career high in his assist percentage at 20.9%. It was his best since his rookie season. And he has bounced around the league ever since he left the Lakers and then he left the Cavaliers. He found a home in Utah, and he just really knows how to be a spark plug for this team, kind of similar to Colin Sexton, which is why Colin Sexton is kind of on the trade block because he fills the same role that Jordan Clarkson does. Jordan Clarkson has been here longer. He's got better size on him, and he's just been a fan favorite of the Utah Jazz for many years. Everybody appreciates what he brings. A lot of times when your team is needing a bucket, Jordan Clarkson is the guy who's going to go out and get it for you. At the same time, though, his defensive metrics are not good, especially last year. He had a defensive box plus minus of minus 2.4, which is why even though he dropped almost 21 a night, 4 and 4 on 33% shooting from the three-point line, which isn't great, he only has a 0.3 value over replacement player because he's inefficient. He doesn't play good defense. He has his flaws and his limitations, which is why you kind of hope to have him come off the bench in his primary role instead of being a starter, and then have him in to close out the games alongside, you know, a clutch Kelly Olynyk and Lauri Markkanen, because his team was magical last year. Moving on, though, to Lauri Markkanen, the breakout, most improved player of the year, and the reason why this rebuild is starting to look bright because, oh my gosh, Lauri Markkanen, what a feel-good story. What a breakout year for this guy. In Chicago, he had a good rookie season, kind of an okay sophomore season, and then just kind of busted because Chicago has the worst development team in the history of basketball. Then he goes to Cleveland. He kind of has mediocre starter minutes, and you say, well, he's not a complete bust. Maybe there's an NBA player in there somewhere. And then, man, they trade for Donovan Mitchell and give up Lauri Markkanen. And don't you think they wish they kept Lauri in the trade? But hindsight 2020, damn, does Lauri Markkanen look good as a #1 on his own team. He was a knockdown shooter last year, 39.1%. He doesn't really operate out of the post well. His dribble isn't great, but he can put the ball on the court, get to a spot, and elevate with that 6'11 size that he has with a near unblockable jump shot. He's got pretty good off-ball movement. His size is lethal on both sides of the court. He can score with the catch and shoot. He can get to the line because he's graceful despite his 6'11 frame. I don't use the word athletic when I think of Lauri Markkanen, but certainly smooth, and he can get by those slower big men or shoot over shorter defenders. So at the small forward position, he's a mismatch, especially when you have a John Collins and a Walker Kessler backing him up, or maybe even a Taylor Hendricks, Kelly Olynyk starting at the power forward position. He took a career high in shots taken last year, and he improved his efficiency, true shooting of 64%. And it's rare when a guy both boosts the volume and the output that he has while also improving his efficiency. That is why Lauri was so good last year. That is why he's an all-star. We can only hope that he continues on this efficient development track that he is on. Now, is he going to be a superstar? That is the question, because right now he's a borderline all-star, which is a good player, but is he going to carry you to a championship? That's what I'm not sure about. Now, there's a lot of development that this team needs to go on, and that's why I have them as a playoff team, not a championship team. I think there's still one big Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo piece away from winning the whole damn thing. But Lauri Markkanen certainly up there can be a potential #2 option like Chris Middleton, like Jamal Murray. He proved that he is good and a mismatch every single time he's on the court because he's so tall and so graceful. I'm nothing but impressed with what Lauri Markkanen did and the chances that he got last season. And it's a credit to Will Hardy because you look at these guys, there's a ton of guys with chips on their shoulders. Colin Sexton out for the season, too short, can't defend, comes over and has a pretty good season. Jordan Clarkson, kind of been a grinded out sort of career that he's had. Chip on his shoulder. Blocker Kessler falls to the 22nd pick. John Collins, kicked out of Atlanta, basically. Chris Dunn, kicked out of the league. Taylor Horton-Tucker, kicked out of LA. Ochai Agbaji gets traded immediately after drafted. Kelly Olynyk bounced around the league. Omer Yurtseven, an undrafted guy. Luka Samanic hasn't been on any team longer than 2 days. So there's a lot of underappreciated chips on the shoulders mentality that's going on here in Utah. And I kind of like it. There's not reclamation projects, but these guys are saying, we're better than the NBA thinks we are, and we're going to go out and prove it. None better epitomized than Lauri Markkanen himself. Moving on to their new pickup, and I think John Collins is going to be starting at the power forward position, which is why I have him slotted in here. And the problem with John Collins, I think, is more mental than his actual game because he's stopped developing. He has no confidence. That three-point shot fell off to 29%, which was a career low. And when you think of John Collins, you think of high-flying, power forward, efficient, three-point shooter, catch and shoot, solid defender. And then you look back at the first 3 seasons he had. His first year, he scored 10 points a game, 34% from the three-point line. You're like, all right, that's good. Then the next year, he almost doubles his output, 19.5 points a game, 35% from the three-point line. Then the next year, 21 points a game, 40% from the three-point line. You're like, all right, this is it. John Collins is the next superstar. And then he kind of hovers around there, and then he gets misused by the offensive systems as Trae Young ball hogs and decides that he wants to play with Clint Capella more than John Collins. And then John Collins just kind of gets his role reduced. His usage rate plummets. Last year, having a career low usage rate at 17.1%. And it broke his confidence. It broke his game. It broke his jump shot. He never developed a rhythm in the season. And he kind of had a falling out with Trae Young, which is what happens when these giant superstar egos have to collide. So hopefully John Collins is going to come back and return to a little bit of that form. Are you going to get the potential all-star superstar John Collins? Probably not, but are you going to get this scrub who doesn't know how to play basketball? Probably not either. I think the John Collins that the Utah Jazz are going to get is somewhere in the middle, maybe 15, 16 points a night, 37% from the three-point line, solid energy both sides of the court, positive defender. He was also dealing with an injured finger that basically plummeted his three-point shooting until he had a late season run, which even then only got his three-point shooting up to 29%. So I think that this was one of the moves that the bad teams always tend to do, where they sell their best players when they're at their lowest. And John Collins was at his lowest point last year, and that's why he got traded away for effectively a second-round pick. So I'm more than happy to see a young John Collins, who's only going to be 26 years old in this upcoming season, get a new chance and a new start, kind of exactly like how Lauri Markkanen came over, got a new chance, got a new start. So we'll have to see. John Collins is the big question mark of this team of what he's going to offer to them, because he is a power forward. And you look at this lineup, let's just slot in Talen Horton-Tucker or Chris Dunn at the 1 instead of Colin Sexton. Then you can have Jordan Clarkson or Ochai Agbaji, whatever, at the 2. Then you got Lauri Markkanen at the 3, almost 7 foot. John Collins at the 4, about 6'9", 6'10", and then Walker Kessler at the 5, 7'2". This team is stupidly long. Their defensive rating could be ridiculous. They could be the longest team in the NBA depending on their lineup, and they have so much flexibility and depth on this team they can mix and match to the other team. Let's talk about Walker Kessler though, because everybody loves Walker Kessler, and I'm less of a Walker Kessler fan than most. Now, shout out to the big fella for having a really good season. You can see his blocks per 100 possessions, 4.9. His legit 7'2" frame made him a constant block threat in every possession, and he played with such confidence all season. And we have to give a lot of credit to head coach Will Hardy. And honestly, Jazz fans are saying this, he looks better out there than Rudy Gobert does. Now, his offense is probably always going to be a 0, but we do need to get that free throw shot up. 51% from the free throw line is simply unacceptable and borderline unplayable in late game situations. But there is a quiet sort of tenacity to his rebounding that needs to get more attention. He averaged 9 and 8, which is pretty good, but you stretch out the numbers to per 100 possessions, or you just take a look at the games that he started down the stretch. He was averaging a double-double every single game as a rookie, 14.4 and 13.1 per 36. Per 100 possessions, he was averaging 19 and 11. Offensive rating 140, defensive rating 111. VORP 2.1 for a rookie is ridiculous. Most guys who are 6'10" are actually 6'8", and most guys who are 6'8" are actually closer to 6'5". But Walker Kessler is a legit 7'2" big man, and he's graceful on the perimeter too. I talked about this a bit in his NBA scouting, but he moves really well for a guy who's 7'2". Now, he does struggle with physicality in the post, and we're seeing that exploited in the FIBA tournament. Rookies and young big men, they need to learn this part of the game. Using leverage, not falling for pump fakes. Jonas Valanciunas especially, who's really good at pump fakes, got him up in the air, and Walker Kessler, also known as Blocker Kessler, does get a little bit block happy. He jumps early and jumps at every first pump fake, and he really just got sunned by Jonas. But he'll learn the game and he'll learn more discipline, and his blocks might go down, but his defense could get even better. Speaking of the blocks though, he blocked 173 times last year, and for a rookie on the all-time block ladder, that was 16th, ahead of guys like Dwight Howard and Brook Lopez. But he also did it in less minutes than every single other person above him other than Mark Eaton. On shots he contested within 6 feet, he only gave up 51.3%, fourth in the league behind guys like Giannis, Bismack Biyombo, pause, and then Jaren Jackson Jr. So you can tell that the defensive versatility is insane. The offensive ability, not really there, but he's going to be a big body in the post. He has a lot of gravity, and we'll see what kind of season he has upcoming. At the end of the day, Walker Kessler, fan favorite, defensive masterpiece, and he just needs to continue to develop his game. Moving on to the next 5, where we're going to start with Chris Dunn. Of all people, who would have thought that Chris Dunn was still in the NBA? Now, he can defend at a high level, and he still can, which is impressive, but he was ridiculously good for them too. And again, I have to credit Will Hardy, because every single piece that they brought in played well for this team, and that's why they struggled with tanking. Like, this team could not stop winning games, even though after they made all the trades for Donovan Mitchell and getting rid of Joe Ingles and Bogdanovich and Rudy Gobert, they were probably the least talented team in the NBA and still went 37-45 after trying to tank. And Chris Dunn is just another one of those feel-good stories. Out of the league, comes back, plays well, has a really good float game, uses his freaky long wingspan and defended on ball at a really high level and played well to the point where he got re-signed this season with a partially guaranteed contract. Now, his ball handling and playmaking is still rough. That's going to be a problem, and his turnovers weren't great, 1.6 last year to 5.6 assists. But you look at his per 100 possessions, again, I know it's in a very small sample size. He only played 22 games and started in 3, but he put up 24.4 points per 100 possessions, 10.4 assists, 8.4 rebounds, 125 offensive rating, 114 defensive rating. Part of why this team continued to win games even though they shouldn't is because he was electric and dynamic, and he might be the starting point guard coming into the season. Or Talen Horton-Tucker might be the starting point guard coming into the season because he was playing really well for them as a point guard down the stretch too. Now, I know he looks like a grandpa given his hairline. Oh my God, he's like 22 years old and his hair looks like it's 42 years old. But he's still a bright spot for this team, a young player that they might be able to build around, a solid playmaker. We're still not sure which version of Talen Horton-Tucker is going to come out any night. Is he going to be the guy who's a solid playmaker, setting up his teammates, or is he going to be that turnover machine that shoots 12% from the three-point line? So it's still undecided. Is he a point guard? Is he a shooting guard? But he's still, at the end of the day, a decent slasher who can kick to the open man with a decent assist to turnover ratio. Last year was an awful 3.8 assists to 1.9 turnovers. So kind of that 2-to-1 ratio that you don't love for your point guard, but somebody who was okay. He's unafraid to shoot and will take any shot, but man, when he shoots with the confidence of Steph Curry and has the shooting percentage of Draymond Green, it's a little bit of a problem for your team's efficiency. I mean, his three-point shot is going down season by season. He came to league at 30, then 28, then 26, last year 28 again. It's just, you got to stop taking these threes because it's making you borderline unplayable. Now, he does have to work on his consistency, and that's always been the thing about Talen Horton-Tucker. Even when LeBron James was cheering him on, saying that this guy is the next guy that's going to take over the NBA alongside me and AD, and then he gets traded away for like 2 second-round picks. But Talen Horton-Tucker does have talent. That's why he's still on the team. And that's why he might be their starting point guard coming next season too. He's got to cut down on those boneheaded passes that lead to turnovers and fast breaks going the other way. And he's got to cut down on his three-point shooting or improve the three-point shooting, which is less likely. And he's got to improve his shooting around the rim. I think there's a stat out there that he's only in the 15th percentile in finishing percentage around the rim within 0 to 5 feet or whatever. So it was pretty ugly, but if he can find some consistency this upcoming season, maybe he could be a starter. And he closed out the season last year averaging 18, 5, and 6, and that's more than good enough to be a starting point guard for a championship team, if we're being completely honest. Moving on to another great young piece that they're going to be building around is Ochai Agbaji. And he was one of my favorite players out of the draft because he was this nice, polished product. He could shoot the three, he could defend, and he was crazy athletic. And just like Lauri Markkanen, I bet the Cleveland Cavaliers kind of wished that they could keep him in the trade when they went over for Donovan Mitchell as well. He's a reliable catch and shoot shooter. I know he only shot 35% from the three-point line. I think that's going to get better. You look at his corner three-point percentage, it's 45%. That's more of what you like to see with these catch and shoot guys. He's a tick undersized at 6'5", but he can more than make up for it with his athleticism and his on-ball defense, and I think he can be a perfect 3-and-D guy. There is a lot of room to grow theoretically, but for me, he's one of those guys that doesn't have a lot of upside to him other than 3-and-D. I think he's going to be either a really good role player or a really bad star player, depending on what you ask for him to do. He struggled a lot with playmaking last year. Again, like everybody else on this roster, turned it on a little bit in the second half of the season when he was given more of a chance to do so and the season was basically given up on. But seeing him struggle in the summer league with his playmaking, I think his ceiling is just going to be a really good 3-and-D player for him. I wouldn't ask him to do too much creating, but I would ask him to be the point of attack defender on defense and then shoot 40% from the three-point line on the offensive end. Moving on to Taylor Hendricks, who may be their starting power forward, or maybe it's Kelly Olynyk again. Not really sure what direction they're going to go with this team, but Taylor Hendricks was the number 9 pick for a reason because he is a freaky athlete. He's a 6'10" dude, elite athlete, high-level defensive player who also happened to shoot almost 40% from the three-point line as a freshman. Him plus Walker Kessler plus Lauri Markkanen, theoretically on the defensive end, is insanity. On the offensive end, is insanity, but he hasn't played a minute of the summer league because he dealt with injury, and he hasn't played a minute of NBA basketball yet, so we can't give credit where credit is not due. But he was my favorite of the next tier of big men coming out of the draft. There was, let's see, there was him, there was G.G. Jackson, Chris Murray, Kyle Filipowski, Deron Holmes, Trace Jackson Davis, Mohamed Gate. There was a lot of 6'9", 6'10" guys who were coming out of this year's draft class that were kind of offering something similar to Taylor Hendricks. But Taylor was just the most polished offensive product out of everybody that I saw. He was only like a 4-star prospect in high school, but he was just so good for UCF that I certainly understand why he went with the number 9 overall pick and probably could have gone a little bit earlier, if we're being honest. Now, he doesn't have a great dribble given his 6'10" frame, and he doesn't have much shot creation right now. He doesn't handle the ball or shoot too much other than catch and shoot threes, but he's very comparable to a Jabari Smith, Christian Wood kind of prospect. So we'll have to see what Taylor Hendricks can offer. Again, we saw literally no playing time of him playing against other NBA players due to injury. So he's going to be a really raw prospect, and we'll have to see what he has in this upcoming season. Somebody who's been around the league forever is Mr. Kelly Olynyk, and he was just magically one of the best players in the clutch last year for seemingly no reason. But just like everybody else on this team, he played up to his max potential, and there's always a spot on an NBA roster for a guy who's about 6'10", can shoot 39% from the three-point line on high volume, makes clutch buckets when you least expect it for your team, but he does flop a lot. And I literally just laugh when I watch Kelly Olynyk play because he's flopping almost every possession trying to draw a foul. It is annoying. He's not a great rebounder. He's not a great defender, but he's smart. He makes the rotations. He does his best, but he does have his limited upside, and he is going into a year 32 season, so we might see a little bit of regression from Kelly Olynyk, but at this point, he's a really solid piece for any team that he goes on, and this Utah Jazz team is lucky to have him. Maybe you'll be able to mentor a Taylor Hendricks who has much more physical upside, but at the very least, a good backup center, backup power forward, backup whatever role they need Kelly Olynyk to play. Moving on to the next 5, and we have Keyonte George, the potential top 5 pick that fell out due to concerns about his height and his weight and his consistency and his shot selection. And he can do a little bit of everything. Now, to me, there's nothing spectacular that he does, although he balled the hell out in the Summer League, dropping like 30 points a game. But again, the shot selection was not great. The turnovers were not great. He is also undersized when he's out there. He looks a little bit shorter than you expect, probably closer to 6'2". But he is a good athlete, just not a freak athlete. Doesn't have a 40-inch vertical, but probably has a 39-inch vertical. And we did struggle with injuries at Baylor, like I mentioned, and he did have those turnover issues. He had more turnovers than assists, which is a problem, especially when you want him to be a potential point guard given his size. His decision-making and shot selection was really an issue, and you could see that evidence in the Summer League. He had a bit of a green light, and he took a lot of bad shots, which is not what you want on this team when you already have a Colin Sexton, when you already have a Jordan Clarkson, when you have guys like Lauri Markkanen who you want taking the volume of the shots, or a guy like Ochai Baji shooting 40% for 3, or Taylor Horton-Tucker setting your teammate up. You don't want Keyonte George jacking up more bad shots. So this is going to be a rough year to see what Keyonte George offers. Can he hold up on the defensive end given his limited size? People were complaining that he was out of shape, but I actually preferred him when he had a little more meat on his bones because he's out there and he looks small. He looks bully-bull on the defensive end, and that's kind of why Colin Sexton is struggling to find a role on every team that he goes to. But Keyonte George flashed and dazzled in the Summer League, so we will have to see what he offers to this team in his rookie year. The other rookie is Bryce Sensabaugh, who we also did not see in the Summer League alongside Taylor Hendricks. A little disappointing to us Jazz fans who were watching along, trying to see what these young guys offered, but he was... I compare them to the Spurs when they picked up Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham. Blake was more of the athlete, but couldn't really shoot. Didn't have a nice shooting splits or efficiency, but he was a feisty, fiery slasher who plays with energy. Whereas Malachi Branham was more of the polished shooter, knocked down 40% from, ironically, Ohio State, but wasn't as good of an athlete. And that's kind of what we have here with Keyonte George and Bryce Sensabaugh. They're basically similar frames. Bryce Sensabaugh is a little bigger, although he listed at 6'6". He's definitely closer to 6'3", 6'4", but he shot 40% from the three-point line in college. Hopefully that translates. Doesn't have a lot of shot creation of his own, but he is a scorer and has that thick build, which maybe is going to help him a little bit more on the defensive end. I also think he's got a few inches of height on Keyonte George, but he's not quite the athlete that Keyonte George is. So they're going to be forming a nice 1-2 duo here. We'll see who balls out, who sticks around on the roster, and who might be replaceable. Somebody who's irreplaceable, though, is Simone Fontecchio, who was okay last year. Weirdly, he hit a couple game winners, but at the same time, I just don't know if he's an NBA player. Coming over from Europe, he just really struggled with his consistency. Some nights he would look like a three-point sharpshooter. Some nights he'd be a disaster out there on the court. But he's one of your classic, big, slow shot maker European guys who doesn't have the athleticism but tries hard, plays angles well, moves his feet as best as he can. And just like a lot of these guys from Europe, when they can't play make for other guys, when they can't defend at a high level, if his three-point shot isn't falling, then he's going to be a liability out there and probably need to be replaced. But if his shot is falling, he looks like he's a starter and a star player for this team. Moving on to another player with a chip on his shoulder, it's Luka Samanic. And Luka was really out of the league. After the Spurs cut him, he went to the Knicks. He didn't get a single minute there. I think he went to the Celtics and he just really struggled because there's a lack of commitment that he has. There's rumors going out that he loves to go out and party before games, which is part of why he doesn't play that well, because he doesn't have a high priority on basketball. But look, there's always a spot in the NBA for guys who are about 6'10", who can theoretically shoot the three. The problem is his effort is non-existent. His defensive effort is lacking. Now, he did ball out in the minutes that he got last year, which was a career high. He played like 162 minutes, which is more regular season NBA minutes than he's played ever before. So he did get a chance and he played well, which is why he's getting a roster spot. But he's also like a fourth-year guy who was playing in the summer league because he hasn't secured any role for any team up to this point. So we'll have to see what Luka Samanic can actually offer to this team. Was a first-round pick for a reason, kind of one of those 6'10" European bigs who can do a little bit of everything. We'll just have to see if the effort is there and if it translates in this upcoming season. And there's going to be a lot of competition at this power forward spot. You have Simone Fontecchio, you have Kelly Olynyk, you have John Collins, you have Lauri Markkanen, you have first-round number 9 overall pick Taylor Hendricks. So it's going to be tough for Luka Samanic to earn minutes. He's going to have to actually try, and we'll see how that goes. Moving on to Omer Yurtseven, and I'm a little shocked at how little of a chance the Heat actually gave him, because he was honestly pretty good for them when he played. When Bam was out, he averaged 12 and 12 for those 3 weeks, and he even had a 22 and 11 game versus Joel Embiid. He just dealt with an ankle injury that cost him last season. He's a solid enough center, theoretically can shoot the three, but just didn't get a lot of run for the Miami Heat. And for whatever reason, they said we're going to look in a different direction, and they were leaning on guys like Dwayne Dedmon than they were more of Omer Yurtseven. Omer, I don't even think got any minutes in the NBA Finals or throughout the NBA playoffs. So I'm more confused at what the Heat didn't like about him. Maybe there was something in training camp that was a big issue. Maybe the mental aspect hasn't come along well enough. But look, Omer Yurtseven is a young guy too. He's going to go into his age 25 season. He played 9 games last year and had a 126 offensive rating, 112 defensive rating. His per 100 possession numbers are 24 and 14. He's not an elite rim protector, but you already have that in Walker Kessler. You just need somebody who can fill up the lane, and I feel like Omer Yurtseven's going to be able to do that for this team. And then moving on to the rest of the guys, the two-ways and the 10-day contract guys, you have Joey Hauser, brother of Sam Hauser, who's a serious defensive liability like his brother, and if he isn't shooting the ball, it's ugly. He's a turnover machine. He has passing issues, he has dribbling issues, he has playmaking issues, but if he's shooting the three, he's doing a good thing because Joey Hauser will stretch the floor. I just don't know if he has enough upside to compensate for all of his deficiencies on the defensive end. Johnny Juzang, similar. We all love Johnny in UCLA for that run that he had 3 years ago, but let's be honest, he can't guard a parked car. His shot is lethal, especially from mid, but he has the athleticism of a rock. He sucks at threes, at least he did in last season, and that's part of his problem. Nobody shoots the mid-range game, and he didn't shoot the three-pointer at a high clip last year. The NBA three-point line is a few feet back from the NCAA level, so he really tests the definition of what is an NBA player. How good can somebody be at one skill? In Johnny Juzang's case, it's shooting the ball at about 20 to 25 feet, but he sucks at everything else. He's a terrible defender. He has no basketball IQ. He has minimal playmaking. His passing isn't great, and his defense is a liability. So Johnny Juzang, I like him, but we'll see. And Micah Potter, of all their two-way guys, he might be the one most likely to actually offer something to this team. He's got that big-bodied 6'9", 6'10"-ish build, wide frame, similar to a Simone Fontecchio. He's got a quick trigger from three. He played really well in the summer league. He uses his size and his body control well. He's not a great athlete, struggles a little bit on the perimeter and laterally, but he's an interesting piece that might be able to step in for some valuable minutes while some of the other guys are either injured or they're experimenting with rosters. Romeo Langford, he's really been bouncing around the league forever. Had a run with the Spurs, wasn't good enough to earn a roster spot. Not going to talk about him. Tavion Kinsey, I don't see an NBA player with him. Theoretically, he can shoot the three, but it was low volume in college. Defense, athleticism, when he touches the ball, disaster. And then Nick Agenda, a tall, skinny kid. He's a decent athlete, but he's got that tweener size of like 6'9", 6'10". He can't shoot, can't rebound, isn't very strong, isn't very tall. I don't know what he offers to an NBA team either. And moving on to the coach and culture ranking, where they are going to come in at tier 2. Now, I almost put them as tier 1 because I was so impressed with Will Hardy, but it was only 1 season. So we cannot give you the sun and the moon after 1 year. But if he repeats his performance like he did last year, I'd be hard pressed to say Will Hardy isn't a top 3 coach in the NBA. This dude was just pressing all the right buttons no matter who they brought in, no matter what rosters they ran out, every single guy would play to the peak, to the max potential that they had. And when they would go to a different team, they would play worse. Now, I like the offense that they're running. I like that they're shooting a little bit more. I like the transition and shots that they get up. Their defense isn't the funnel everybody to Rudy Gobert, or in this case, funnel everybody to Walker Kessler. They actually play team defense, which is new to the Utah Jazz. But I just love everything that Will Hardy brought to this team. And it's going to be interesting to see what he does year two, because a lot of guys, even coaches, can be 1 year wonders. But can you do it year 2, year 3, year 4 consistently? That's what separates the, oh, he had a good season from, oh, he's a good coach. That's why Eric Spoelstra, Greg Popovich are the best coaches in the NBA, while a guy like Dwayne Casey had a good year, won a Coach of the Year award, but he's out now as an assistant coach, I think. And then we just can't say enough about what Danny Ainge has done for the team. Now, I know Danny Ainge is the CEO and Justus Zanuck is the GM. Who's going to get the credit for the job that's done here? I think it's going to go to the higher up guy, Danny Ainge, just because we've seen him do it before, and it looks like he's doing it again, creating an incredible culture here because they have a stockpile of assets. They have a stockpile of talent. They don't go out and just spend money on Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet when they're trying to win a championship. So like I said, this team has been nothing but incredible, and I'm so impressed with how the team has rebuilt on the fly in 1 year. Looking at their contracts, there's nothing too awful here. You got John Collins locked up for 2 years, plus a player option that'll probably accept on that final year. Jordan Clarkson, team-friendly deal. Colin Sexton, solid deal, but he's probably going to get traded if we're being completely honest. Lauri Markkanen's on a great deal, and he's going to get a max extension if he continues to play like he did last season. Kelly Olynyk, contract year. Taylor Horton-Tucker, contract year. Taylor Hendricks, rookie. Ochai Agbaji, rookie. Keontae George, rookie. Simone Fontecchio, minimum. Walker Kessler, rookie. Bryce Sensabaugh, rookie. Then Omer Yurtseven on a friendly deal. Chris Dunn, that $2.5 million deal for what he gave you last season is incredible, and it's not even a fully guaranteed contract. And then Lucas Samanic. So the only complaints that you could have is that they haven't gone out and signed a superstar Kevin Durant caliber player who don't often come around. And even if they did come around, they're not going to go to Utah. So Utah has always had to get creative in how they're going to get their superstars to their teams. And there's just a ton of flexibility on this team. There's not a lot of bad contracts. The worst one you could say was John Collins that they traded for, but they may have a potential all-star on their hands. And if he's no good, so be it. His contract is up in 3 years, and their rookie deals haven't even kicked in yet with Ochai and Taylor Hendricks and Simone Fontecchio. So there's nothing but cap flexibility for this team. They're one of the few teams who aren't even over the salary cap this year because they're just masterful with their contracts, masterful with the salary cap, and I'm nothing but impressed with this Utah Jazz team. If you can't tell, I've been gushing over this team for a long time, but that's why they're going to come in with that 79.42 rating plus 20,000 championship odds. And look, if I'm a betting man, I'm taking the over on their 34.5 projected wins because I know that their team doesn't have championship aspirations, but I just feel like they're going to outperform again. Lauri Markkanen going to ball out. Walker Kessler going to be similar to how he was last season. Jordan Clarkson going to be a stud. John Collins, maybe he returns to form. Colin Sexton either going to play well or get traded. Taylor Horton-Tucker, Chris Dunn, Taylor Hendricks, Keontae George. There's just so much potential upside for this team. And I'm impressed with Will Hardy enough to say they're going to outperform expectations again and shock the league again. What does that mean for them? I fully expect to see the Utah Jazz in the playoffs this season. But that is going to do it for the team coming in at the 19th ranking. Let me know what your thoughts are, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one.